Hey, it's Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California, and it's time to gather around, kids. We're going to learn how to do a proper Baddha Konasana. Now, if you don't like being talked to like you're a first grader, then you gotta stop doing this pose like you're in first grade. Let's talk like adults here, shall we? I'm gonna go over today 5.5 mistakes that I bet you're making in Baddha Konasana. What is Baddha Konasana? Baddha Konasana is this. Oh, it's also this. Same thing. One's up, one's down. Let's start with the first. Now, the first is what I'm going to call the half. Why? Because it's not a crucial mistake, but it's one that almost every single person makes. And it's just the name, Baddha Konasana. It sort of sounds like butterfly, doesn't it? Well, I know when you were in first grade, this was a butterfly pose. Guess what? You're not in first grade anymore. And if you are in first grade, awesome that you're tuning in. You're going to be the only first grader who knows about Baddha Konasana. Baddha Konasana actually means bound angle pose. Baddha means bound, Kona means angle. Now, asana doesn't actually mean pose, it means seat, but we use it to mean pose in English. So, Baddha Konasana is not a butterfly, and though I know cobbler sounds so much more mature than butterfly, it's not a cobbler either. It's just bound angle. Okay, that's number one half. Let's go into the 5 actual physical mistakes that most people make in this pose. Number 1. In first grade, we learned to hold our feet together like this, right? And fold forward. I hope that what I'm about to tell you makes perfect sense. That when you pull your feet together, you also pull your legs together. Why? Because as you learned in first grade, the leg bone is connected to the foot bone. Let's just leave it at that. Instead of pulling the feet together, what you should be doing is actually opening them like a book. Think about it. When my foot presses in, the leg that happens to be connected to it is going to pull in the same direction. When the foot turns out, the leg will also turn out in the same direction. So this is just such a simple fix. Instead of feet together, think about feet apart. Now, it's probably not going to happen, but it might. Think about literally trying to get all of your toes on the floor, your toenails, okay? That will help. So you're opening the feet like a book. That's number 1. Now, number 2. Number 2 is this thought that in order to get the knees, say, to the floor, then we need to be moving our knees down in space. Okay, again, makes sense, right? Down equals down. Well, that's not exactly how it works in your actual body. Why? Because A, the leg is actually going to move at a diagonal. It's not going to move straight down because of the length of a leg. But B, here's what's interesting. Baddha Konasana is a hip opener, right? It's a hip stretch. So your focus is not on a leg. It's not a leg stretch. It's on your hip. Okay, why is this interesting? Because we have in our hips what are called hip flexors, right? A hip flexor is what allows the leg to sort of come in and away from your body. For this pose, the primary hip flexor that we're going to talk about is what's called your iliopsoas. Some people just call it the psoas. Okay, so the iliopsoas actually starts in your low back, goes through your body, and then enters to what's called the it's called the lesser trochanter. Trochanter is like a blob on a bone. I don't know what else to call it, like a protrusion. So it goes through your body and connects here. Why is that important? Because it acts like a drawbridge, right? Think about a drawbridge. There's a chain that lifts and lowers the bridge, right? As the chain gets shorter, the bridge comes up, right? You've all been to those medieval castles with the drawbridges. As it gets longer, the bridge goes down. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, think about just this part of your psoas, okay? The tighter it is, right? If it's short, it's going to pull the femur, right, your leg bone, closer to your hip, right? Because it's simply shorter. If this length is longer, then the knee goes down. So when you're thinking about going down and going down safely, think not about knees in this direction, think about knees in this direction, because that's what's going to actually lengthen your psoas and get your legs lower. Now, number 3 is associated with number 2. Number 2 answers the question of number 3, but our egos have a tendency to get in the way of what is smart in a pose. The ego says knees down to the floor. Okay, yoga says knees as low as works for your body. So most people that are trying to get their knees to the floor do something like this, right? They press into their legs. Now, we already learned that we're actually trying to move in this direction rather than this direction, but pressing down will, in fact, get your legs lower. However, it's very easy to injure yourself that way, because if your body were ready to lower your knees down, your knees would go down. When you push into it, you're asking for muscle like tears or at least strains. So be patient. Let it go as low as works for your body, thinking in this direction instead of this direction. Now, for numbers 4 and 5, I'm going to turn sideways so you can see what I'm talking about. If you're particularly tight, your knees are not going to be super low, and you're probably holding onto your feet, and you're going to wind up like this. You see how my spine is rounding behind my hips? You don't want your spine rounding behind your hips. No matter how tight you are, that's going to be counterproductive. So, a few things you can do. One would be to sit on a block, and if I thought about this in advance, I would have brought a block on screen, but you could sit on a block or a bolster. Another one would be to put your hands behind you to lift your chest up. Another would be try to adjust how far your feet are from your body to find the place where your spine is at least vertical over your hips and not rounding behind. And if all else fails, go right up against the wall. Get your back flat. That means my tailbone is on the floor and my back. And then see if you can sit up as tall as possible, trying to get your spine straight, okay? So any of these modifications is going to be more effective than trying to do the pose by collapsing in. Okay, number 5.5. I think I said number 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. I meant 1.5 and 2.5 and 3.5 and 4.5. And now number 5.5. If you've been watching me for a while, you're going to be able to finish the next sentence before I do. If you haven't, listen closely. Every forward bend in yoga has an element of a back bend. okay? They may sound counterintuitive. What it means is that instead of rounding forward, this is called spinal flexion, okay? I always move forward from a back bend. This is called spinal extension. Now, obviously, this is not the kind of back bend that like you're thinking of, like an upward bow, another one that everybody calls by many, many wrong names. Okay, upward bow is like your basic back bend. A lot of people call it a bridge. It's not a bridge. Some people call it a wheel. It's not a wheel. It's upward bow. That's like a big, 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 big back bend. But spinal extension would be as simple as this. So when you go forward, don't round in. Why do people round in? Because they want to go deeper, right? When I round my spine, my head is lower than when I extend my spine, correct? I mean, that's very, very obvious. But the goal of this pose is not to get lower, it's to get a better stretch. So what happens is when I go into a forward bend with an extended spine, it lifts the pelvis to help to lengthen out the leg stretch and give me a deeper stretch, okay? When I round my spine, okay, this time, sorry, I'm going forward instead of backwards, it instead collapses the pelvis and actually releases the stretch. So again, number 1, half, this is Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose. Number 2, open your feet like a book. Number 3, legs go in an outward direction instead of a downward direction. Oh, sorry, number 2.5. What's with me and counting? Number 3.5, sorry, don't push down. 4.5, don't let your spine round behind your hips. And number 5.5, don't let your spine round in front of your hips. So, Baddha Konasana looks like feet apart, knees pull wide, not pressing into my legs, spine in front of the hips, extended spine as I fold. I hope that helps you out. Remember that I have 2 Vimeo channels of full-length classes, meaning like everything from like 20 minutes to 2 hours or more, full-length vinyasa classes, to make sure that A, you're doing things in a way that is safe for your body, and B, you are always leveling up. Link is in the description. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Have an awesome day.